interesting is when you talk to the young women about why they joined, why they're in Syria, or why they've returned, they talk about actually very similar stuff to men. They talk about politics, they talk about oppression, they talk about violence and the way in which the West is harming innocent civilians in Iraq and Syria. They talk about wanting to be part of a new political future. These are the same things that men talk about. But they do talk about them in a slightly different way. So these are the same topics, but instead the young women tend to talk about them in terms of empathy, in terms of caring, whereas men tend to talk about it wanting to be a hero and having an adventure. When women talk about an adventure, it is about starting a new life, but the adventure begins once they arrive, whereas often for young men the adventure is travelling and the excitement of participation, whereas for the women it's about supporting and building up a new future, and that's the adventure that they participate. We do hear a lot about romance and the idea that they're being groomed, and what that brings to mind for especially European viewers is this idea that actually there's some sexual element. Now for some there is an element of romance, an idealised notion of what it means to be a wife and what a good Muslim is. And this actually ties into some of Islamic State's propaganda about Muslim men in Europe. What they say about Muslim men in Europe is that they are not real men, right? They cannot be real men because the state oppresses them, because they're constantly being put down, because they're not given the opportunity to be breadwinners and properly respected. The community, and these other women have undermined them. So there's a real backlash against women's rights that they're putting forward. And so what we are then seeing is a different notion of masculinity about what makes a good husband. And they're buying into this idea of a good husband is a pious Muslim who's one who's going to protect them, who's going to look after them, give them financial security and stable home life as well. And they forget about the war zone.